Monday, and as usual on a Monday, we take a look at the business affairs. Our financial guru is Chris Givens, and the Money Wrap is brought to you by Capital Legacy, your number one provider of wills and estate administration. Good morning, Chris. Jeepers, I'm all over the place this morning with my mouth. You can tell it's a Monday. Been a freezing cold weekend, snow all over the country. So I suppose we need to warm ourselves up. I see that one of South Africa's more contentious energy policies is back on the table.
Yes, a very good morning to you, Jeremy, from a freezing cold Western Cape. You can bet that as it unfolds, there are going to be howls of protest, and you can also guess that I'm talking about nuclear. Yes, nuclear is apparently back on the table. South Africa's national electricity regulator late last week confirmed it's given approval for government to procure 2,500 megawatts in new generation capacity from nuclear power. Immediately, that was followed by confirmation from the Department of Minerals and Energy that it would go ahead with the procurement process. The procurement should be complete by 2024. That will give everyone involved enough time to build, commission, and connect to the grid. And bear in mind, we're due to lose some 24,100 megawatts after 2030, when a number of elderly coal-fired power stations are decommissioned. So we definitely need the power. And all of this based on a 2019 integrated resource plan, which in turn based on a similar plan released all the way back in 2008.
But Chris, I thought nuclear power or new nuclear power had gone away.
Well, Jeremy, I think so did the rest of us, because you'll recall back in 2017, a plan to produce 9,600 megawatts of new nuclear power was ruled unlawful. And that was because government had failed to hold public hearings on the subject, failed to hold any kind of debate in Parliament on the question. We had at that point lined up deals with Russia, the United States and South Korea to acquire 8 new nuclear plants at a cost of 1 trillion rand. Staggering sum of money. Massive costs, which were, of course, cited at the time by ratings agency Fitch as one of the reasons why they downgraded us.
Okay, well, let's come at this from a different side then. Why is nuclear energy so contentious? I mean, plenty of other countries are using it.
They do, quite correct. France, for example, generates about 70% of its total electricity from nuclear. South Africa's had long, very effective service, of course, from the Koeberg nuclear power station down here in the Western Cape. But there are several factors, I think, which mitigate against nuclear power at this time for this country. The first is the cost of renewables. Solar and wind continues to fall steeply. Both wind and solar are way, way cheaper than nuclear, to say nothing of being more environmentally friendly. Second, as I've just implied, nuclear is very expensive. It takes an enormous amount of time to build, and it's the kind of building project which takes not only time to complete, but is also open to all sorts of cost overruns. And that brings us to the third problem, as we have already seen with the coal-fired Kusile and Medupi. The opportunity for massive scale corruption is embedded in this kind of project. And the fact that certain people are determined to go ahead with nuclear tells me that state capture is very much alive and kicking. And I have to ask the question, I wonder if this decision is not in any way connected with the recent very lengthy trip to Russia by Deputy President David Mabuza. I think it's something of a coincidence, if I can call it that no sooner does he step off the plane arriving home, and suddenly nuclear is back on the table.
Yeah. Listen, the top international financial story, Chris, Jackson Hole has come to an end, and everyone is applauding US Fed Chair Jay Powell. But let me start with a simple question. What is that exactly is this thing called Jackson Hole?
Good question, Jeremy. Jackson Hole is a lodge in the Grand Teton National Park in the US state of Wyoming, where once a year the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank holds a symposium, a big gab fest. The Kansas City Reserve Bank, part of the US Federal Reserve System, their central bank, rather like our Reserve Bank. So all the world's central bankers, top economists, all rock up and they chat for 2 days. They have lots of dinners and speeches, intimate little tete-a-tetes, but the centerpiece is always a speech by the chair of the US Federal Reserve, Jay Powell in this case. Now, given the size and dominance of the US economy, when the US speaks, the rest of us listen. No question about that. Except last year and this year, it didn't actually take place. Like so many other events, it was hammered by COVID, and Jackson Hole was held virtually. So instead of flying halfway around the world, Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago would have sat in his office in Pretoria and joined all the other big cheeses by Zoom or Teams or whatever the latest, greatest piece of software is.
Okay, well, what did Chairman Powell have to say? And in your opinion, did he get it right?
Well, the big question, of course, is when and by how much the Fed will bring to an end its massive bond buying program, quantitative easing. We saw this first after the Great Recession of 2008, and then it was introduced again at the beginning of last year as COVID-19 really hammered the US and the global economy. It's been successful, no question about that, but now the US economy is expanding, inflation is surging, asset prices are sky high, but on the other hand, on the downside, some 6 million more Americans are out of work than was the case before the pandemic started. So Powell had a very difficult balancing act. And remember, when the first round of quantitative easing was stopped back in 2013, the markets panicked, bond yields spiked, bond prices came down, the so-called taper tantrum. And Powell was trying very hard to avoid that this time round. Did he get it right? Well, he reminded his audience of his promise to maintain the pace of bond buying until there'd been substantial further progress on his goals of an average of 2% inflation and maximum employment. The first had been achieved, he said, with clear progress on the second. Did he get it right? Well, suffice it to say that when New York's markets closed on Friday evening, Jeremy, both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ set new record closing highs. So there's your answer.
Thank you. On the local front, more good news for several components of the local airline industry.
Indeed. First off, SAA subsidiary Mango has finally received some money that had been promised to it by government. Mango's in-business rescue had been unable to pay salaries for a couple of months. Now it can do so. Its business rescue practitioner says arrangements for the resumption of operations are being made, and the goal is to have a business rescue plan in place by the end of October. The second thing, Mango's parent SAA intends to be back in the sky from September 23rd. Tickets are already on sale, I gather, with SAA flying from Johannesburg to Cape Town, Accra, Kinshasa, Harare, Maputo, and Lusaka. And the consortium that's likely to become SAA's new strategic equity partner, Takatso, says it has nearly completed its due diligence and nothing untoward has come to light. A third and finally, another low-cost carrier, Kulula.com, will be back in the air from September the 1st, which is Wednesday of this week, I think. It had been grounded as a result of the latest COVID lockdown, which had prevented people from traveling into and out of Gauteng.
I see another thing flashing on the radar, Chris. The Nigerians up to their usual tricks, and it's still multi-choice in their sites.
Yeah, I don't know why we pretend to be surprised, Jeremy. It's a very regular occurrence. This one started, as we reported, back in mid-July. A claim against MultiChoice from the Nigerian tax authorities. Unpaid taxes, they said, amounting to 66 billion rand. Billion with a B, yeah? MultiChoice disputes the claim, wants the case heard by an appeal tribunal. We can do that, said the Nigerians, quoted by Bloomberg. But first, you have to put down 50% of the amount in dispute, plus another 10% on top. In other words, well north of 33 billion rand on the table if you want your case to be adjudicated. So, MultiChoice has corrected that statement. They say, according to Nigerian tax law, they'll have to put down either 50% of the disputed amount or an amount equal to the amount of tax they paid last year, which was way, way lower. So who's right and who's wrong on that one, we'll have to wait and see. But all of this is part of a very well understood set of tactics used by the Nigerians when they run short of cash. They pick a wealthy and successful foreign investor, they present the investor with a bill of astonishing and outrageous proportions, and then haggle it down to something that in the end appears quite reasonable, generous even. The company heaves a sigh of relief just to get this thing out of the way. They pay up and continue. Everyone continues doing business as normal. Let's not forget, as we contemplate this, that this is the country that invented the 419 scam. It's also the reason, I think, why so many South African companies have simply abandoned their Nigerian businesses. Tiger Brands has just joined the exit queue, announcing over the weekend that it's selling its 49% stake in UAC Foods to UAC's parent company, another South African out of Nigeria.
Well, talking about outrageous amounts of money, I see Apple CEO Tim Cook has picked up 5 million shares in Apple, which he sold for $750 million. Now, I've never been a mathematician, but that's over 10 billion rand by my judgment. That's obviously over and above his very generous salary package, so we say. Chris, is this kind of money and this kind of pay, is it justified?
Jeremy, it's a very good question, and it's a central debate executive pay on at the moment. And I think in this case, Tim Cook's $750 million bonus, I think would depend whether you're an Apple shareholder or not. Now, Cook has been at the helm of the world's biggest company now for 10 years. In that time, he's grown it to become certainly the biggest company in the US, one of the biggest in the world. In the last 3 years alone, Apple's share price has increased by nearly 192%. Across the 10-year period as a whole, Apple's share price is up 1,200%. The big problem, of course, with exorbitant executive pay is that more often than not, the big boss gets the big pay packet after delivering very small results. In other words, there's no direct link between the megabucks and the company's performance, and there's supposed to be pay and performance. They say, oh, extenuating circumstances. Oh, the economy wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. Oh, the weather turned bad. Oh, pay me anyway. And shareholders, I think, justifiably are very grumpy about that. In Apple's case, I think that Tim Cook at the helm, I would say that the link between pay and performance is very clear indeed, and Cook has absolutely delivered. There's only one problem, Jeremy, and it's a personal one. I've been an Apple user since 1984 when the Mac 2E came out. I'm hardcore Apple. I'm a real fanboy. But do you think I have ever owned a single Apple share? You know the answer, don't you? Not a one. Not a single one, and here I sit.
There we're going to have to leave it. Chris Gibbons, business journalist, who joins us every Monday, courtesy of Capital Legacy, your number one provider of wills and estate administration. Hey, by the way, we're going to be joined by the CEO of Capital Legacy tomorrow during the legal show, because we're going to be looking at wills. September coming up this week, and that sees the start of Wills Month. So we'll be talking wills tomorrow with Advocate Lance Brogden right here on Mansfield Today. Thank you for joining us. We'll catch you with the Business Report once again next week with Chris Gibbons. Same time, same place. Until then, bye-bye.